Welcome to the Ghostly Gallery Podcast, a place where we explore the world of horror and mystery in film, television, books, and in popular culture. Well, greetings once again, everybody. Welcome to the show. My name is Bruce Markison, and I am joined by Tracy Asteria. Tracy, how are you doing?
I'm doing good, Bruce. Taking advantage of the beautiful summer weather and getting some yard work done and just really soaking in the sunshine. How's everything been going for you?
Pretty good to say the most part. It's been going pretty well, but it is rather humid in our house,
Mm.
specifically in the dining room, aka the recording studio here in Cooperstown for the Ghostly Gallery podcast. It's so humid. I have this one lock of hair that I cannot get to stay down. You probably notice it sticking it up right now. Maybe during our break later on between movies, we'll try to deal with that.
Oh, you're just bringing out your inner alfalfa.
Yeah, that's right. It's funny you mentioned that. When I worked in radio years ago, it was a long time ago, the station manager used to refer to me as alfalfa because I have pretty thin hair and it does stick up on days when the heat and the humidity levels are rising. He didn't call that to me to my face. He would say that to other people, and I found out about it, wasn't that happy about it, but I guess I can take a joke, right?
Oh,
Alfalfa.
geez.
Yeah.
Oh, geez. I know when the humidity hits in my neck of the woods, my hair totally, it goes from straight to just like curly and it's like everywhere. Like the curls just don't stop when it's humid. So,
Yeah.
yeah, my time is coming.
It's like an afro, right? It gets so curly, it's an afro.
It just goes everywhere. It's the weirdest thing. You would
Yeah.
never guess it.
Well, we're going to talk about two movies on this week's edition of the podcast. And I know you're going to like the show because we're not going to be talking about The Food of the Gods, which we talked about on the last show. You were not thrilled with that. You gave it a star and a half. We'll see how the two films this week around do in our opinions. And as we usually do, we like to pick one newer film. We have a film from 2026. Certainly, it's been a big hit. But we also have an older film celebrating a 40th anniversary. And the two movies that we're going to be talking about, first up is Obsession. And people do have an obsession with this film. It has been drawing huge numbers at the box office. I want to say it's grossed at this point over $250 million, not just in America, but worldwide. It's also gotten rave reviews. We'll see if those reviews are legitimate, at least in our opinions. And then after we break down Obsession, we're going to talk about a movie that came out with Emilio Estevez 40 years ago, back in the summer of 1986. And that is Maximum Overdrive, a Stephen King film at the time of its release, not so well received, but opinions on that have changed. So we're raring to go, Tracy. Ready, set, go. Here we are.
Woohoo.
All right, let's begin with the new film, Obsession, which has been all the talk of the horror world. It has been the hit horror movie of 2026 since making its debut on May the 15th. It has drawn stellar reviews, remarkable numbers, as I said, at the box office. It is directed by a young filmmaker named Curry Barker. When I first heard that name, I thought, oh, he's got to be related to the legendary Clive Barker, but no relationship at all.
Mm.
He is a completely different family, no relation to Clive Barker, who is, I believe, British, if I'm not mistaken. Curry is American. Anyway, his film Obsession centers on a good looking, very kind young man who is given the nickname of Bear. Kind of a weird name for a grown adult, but that's how he's referred to throughout the film. And in the opening scene, Bear is sitting in a diner with two of his friends, Ian and Sarah, and he's practicing what he wants to say to a fourth friend, and that is the very attractive and very caring Nikki, with whom he is in love. Ian tells Bear that his little speech is not going to work with Nikki. It's too over the top, it's too direct. But Bear is not really convinced that Ian is right about that. Unfortunately, Bear is not really sure what he should do. Now, when Bear returns home, he finds out that his cat, Sandy, shockingly has died, apparently poisoned from oxycodone tablets that he had mistakenly left out. Now, after talking to Nikki on the phone, Bear heads out to a local souvenir shop to buy a replacement for a necklace that she lost, and she was quite upset about. But he doesn't really find the necklace that he's looking for. So he instead purchases a novelty item called a one-wish willow. And a one-wish willow is a small piece of wood. It's packaged in plastic. The person who uses the willow breaks it in half and then immediately makes a wish, with the company guaranteeing that the wish will be fulfilled. Now, we move ahead a little bit. The four friends go out to a movie. By the way, they all work together at a music store. So these four friends, they see each other all the time, at work, at night. They're seen talking outside of the theater. Now, Nikki needs a ride home, and Bear enthusiastically offers to take Nikki to her house. So that's what he does. Now, the two are sitting in the car, and before Nikki gets out of the car to go into the house, Bear tries to muster the courage to tell Nikki how he feels about it. Of course, he's acting a little bit nervously, a bit strangely, and Nikki, noticing that Bear is a bit uneasy, asks Bear if he likes her. She comes out and asks him, kind of puts him on the spot. Well, in a way, this is sort of an open road now for Bear to talk about his feelings. The door is open, right? But instead of taking the opportunity to tell Nikki how he truly feels, he denies having any feelings for her. He says, no, not at all. So then she walks into the house. And Bear, at this point, he's alone in the car, and he's really furious with himself. He had a chance to say something, blew the opportunity. So he takes out that one-wish willow, breaks it, and in just sort of frustration, and not really sincerely, he makes a wish. He wishes that Nikki would love him more than anyone in the world. And you can tell the way that Bear does this, he doesn't really believe this is going to work. He doesn't do this with any kind of conviction. He's just doing it because he's upset. Well, moments later, Nikki reappears outside of the house in the doorway, and then she approaches the car. She gets into the car, tells Bear that she is upset about her estranged father who is dying of cancer. And as a result, Nikki doesn't want to be alone that night. She wants to stay at Bear's house for the evening. So after a little bit of back and forth, they do go to Bear's house, and he's acting very nervously. He's reluctant to make any kind of move, even though Nikki's kind of dropping hints that she's interested. So as the two lie side by side in the bed, Nikki ends up making the first move, kissing Bear passionately for a few seconds. But then she screams, she pulls back from Bear and apologizes for her rather abrupt actions. Well, from there, Nikki's behavior becomes increasingly weird. For example, she creates a bizarre memorial for the deceased cat, Sandy, and the memorial actually uses Sandy's remains. And she thinks this is a wonderful idea. Bear is taken aback. He doesn't really know what to say. But Nikki and Bear do eventually confess to having feelings for each other, and they begin to date. We see a montage of scenes where they're spending pretty much every waking moment together, including at work and at their homes as well. Now, one night at dinner in a restaurant, this is a key scene. The two of them are having a nice, romantic dinner together. And that's when Bear receives a phone call from Ian, one of the other friends. He tells Bear that Nikki is lying about her father. Ian says her father's not dying. He is perfectly healthy. There's nothing wrong with him. So when Bear returns to the table, he decides to tell Nikki about Ian's claim. And she responds by saying, no, no, no. At first, the no is like, no, Ian is wrong. Ian is not telling the truth. But she continues to say, no, no, louder and louder. And then she basically says, I thought we were having a nice day. And she's screaming this in this restaurant. Everybody can hear it. So she's making a full out scene in front of the whole restaurant. And this is really the first sign that we receive indicating that there is something seriously wrong with Nikki, perhaps caused by that one wish Willow. So before we continue with more of the storyline, Tracy, I want to get your thoughts on that scene at the restaurant, because that was kind of an eye opener for me. What'd you think of it?
No, 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 no. Wow, that was just bananas. Like, I wasn't really expecting that, but, it was kind of bound to happen because you could kinda see, like, little hints of change in her character.
Yeah.
But at this restaurant, something was bound to go down, and it was actually milder than I thought it was going to be, quite honestly. I thought her little first emotional outburst was just going to be absolutely insane, but, it wasn't. It was, fairly disturbing, but, it's showing you more good things to come, I guess. But you're right. That was kind of like the breaking moment,
Yeah.
and you knew something was definitely wrong and things just weren't gonna get any better. So I think that was kind of like the moment where if people didn't understand something was gonna happen, they definitely knew something was gonna happen after this. And, quite honestly, people could remember that scene. It could be a good way to end a date that's not going very well.
Yeah.
An
But,
easy
they
way out.
didn't end the dinner right there. They
No, they
actually,
didn't.
they sat back down. He was able to calm. Didn't they sit back down?
Yep, they did,
I
yes.
thought they did. No,
No, they did sit back down, and they
they did
had a
sit back
wonderful
down.
dinner, and,
Yeah.
yeah, it was interesting, and everybody was watching them, and, like, nobody stood up
Right.
to do anything about it, but then they just kinda went back to eating their meals, and everything was good.
And that's kind of a pattern we see in the movie where Nikki does something outrageous, loses her temper, and then tries or or he tries to settle her down and tries to bring her back to normal. And she maybe comes back to normal for a little bit before the
Mhm.
next episode takes place. So we
That's
see this
right.
kind of ebb and flow with this irrational behavior, and then it calms down a little bit. All right, so let's go back to the story. One night, it's the middle of the night, Bear wakes up and notices that Nikki is not in bed. And he thinks that's a bit strange. So he gets up. The room is really dark. But if you look carefully, you'll see that Nikki is standing against a back wall, completely stiff, motionless, and silent. So Bear asks her what she's doing. And she basically says, oh, I just love watching you sleep. It's kind of thing you might, I don't know, say to a child or something, but you hear that from another adult, that's a little disturbing. She insists on watching him sleep. So she says, go back to bed, go back to sleep. I'm just going to stand here. And that obviously makes him uncomfortable. How you could sleep after that, I don't know. And then the next day, something more disturbing happens. So Bear is getting ready to go to work. It is Nikki's day off, but she makes him a sandwich for lunch. Now, at lunch or at work, while they're having their lunch break, Bear is sitting down with Sarah, one of the other four friends. And Bear tells Sarah about Nikki's strange behavior, how he's concerned, he's not really sure what to do. And then as he's looking at this sandwich, he sees a strange note. And I forget exactly what the note says, but there's a reference to the cat. And then Bear looks down at the sandwich. He sees the meat in the sandwich, and it's not chicken, it's not beef. It is actually made from the remains of the cat, Sandy. And at that point, he becomes ill, as anybody else would. And emotionally, he is like, what is going on? And I know that you're a cat lover. You have a cat, often
Mhm.
appears on the set of the show. I have a couple of cats here. So that's a really disturbing scene.
Yeah.
So Bear is obviously, he's greatly concerned at this point. And he decides, I'm going to contact the home office for One Wish Willow, the company that makes this product. And he tries to find out with the guy he's talking to on the phone if there's a way that he can alter his wish because his new girlfriend is obsessed with him, acting very weird. This is not really what he had in mind. But unfortunately, Bear is told that the only way that he can end the wish is for him to die. That's not a very good option. Most people would not want to take that. So he's thinking there's got to be something else. But the guy on the other end of the phone says, really, that's the only thing you can do. And now later on, there is an effort made by the part of Bear to get one of his other friends to make a wish to kind of contraindicate his initial wish. But as we'll see later on, that does not work very well. But before we get to that, we have Bear invited to a party at Ian's house. And Ian sees how crazy Nikki is acting. And he says to Bear, well, you can come to the party, but you really need to keep Nikki at home. The way that she's acting, this is just not going to work. So when Bear tells Nikki about this supposed all boys get together, well, she makes him feel guilty about it. And he feels guilty enough that he finally says, okay, I'm going to take you with me. Well, as it turns out, the party is co-ed. There's guys, there's girls there. And there's a large group of friends playing, I guess, a kind of Jenga game. I wasn't really sure exactly
Mhm.
what that game was. Did you know, Tracy?
It looked just like Jenga until they started going through it, and I was like, "Oh, it's kind of like a version of Jenga and spin the bottle," I think. It was
Yeah.
so weird.
Yeah, you would pull a piece of the building or the little structure, you'd pull it out,
Mhm.
and then you'd have to follow some kind of a command. It's a
That's
game I'm
right.
not familiar with, but I'm sure it's a game that exists in real life. Anyway, Nikki is one of the players in this game. And at one point, when it's Nikki's turn, she begins to recite this very bizarre, twisted, almost story or a poem. It has something to do with Hansel and Gretel,
Mhm,
but it's
mhm.
not the traditional story. It's very sexual. It's kind of a deviant story. And everybody in the room is just sort of flabbergasted by this little sermon that she's delivered, if you want to call it that. I mean, it's really bizarre.
Yeah.
And none of them really know how to react. And then later in the game, she pushes Sarah out of the way because Sarah is sitting next to Bear. And I think the game challenge is that Bear is supposed to kiss the person to his left. I think that's what it was.
Yes, it was, yeah.
Sounds right. Yeah.
It is, yep.
So hey, the Nick is going to let Bear plant one on Sarah. So she just pushes Sarah out of the way, and she takes Sarah's place so that she can kiss Bear. And yeah, that's pretty rude, pretty weird. But then moments later, she takes a beer bottle and begins to smash it into her own face, basically stabs her own face with the bottle, which breaks, and the jagged pieces, create a real injury. And that necessitates the Bear has to take Nikki to the local hospital. So 3 incidents happen all in succession during this Jenga game.
Mhm.
All right, later on, in the film, Sarah sends this text message to Bear telling him to meet her in the park. This is in the middle of the night. So he very carefully gets out of bed, doesn't want to wake Nikki up, doesn't want to let Nikki know where he's going. He quietly slips out of the house and he meets Sarah in her car. Now, Sarah, who obviously has feelings for Bear, tells Bear that Ian and Nikki had actually been casually getting together, hooking up for the past 2 years. And Sarah expresses concern that Nikki is just basically using Bear to get back at Ian for this. Well, at that point, as the two of them are sitting in the car, Nikki shows up, having followed Bear to the meeting, and she unleashes horrific violence against Sarah. And I'm not going to say any more about the storyline because I don't want to give away the last act, the third act. But that's pretty much the storyline to Obsession. Again, without giving away what's happening in the conclusion. So that is this story as it's been laid out to us by the director, Curry Barker. So Tracy, what did you think of the storyline to Obsession?
Oh, I hate to say it, but the writer sure did know how to take the obsession between people to just this crazy level. You know, a simple crush with a wish for love, they just turned it right into a nightmare, which I found it was an interesting idea. It was kind of fascinating. And, you know, honestly, it's really not that far-fetched for some people, I guess. That one wish willow, it's no real different than, you know, people will seek out love spells or use witchcraft or, you know, magic genies in a bottle granting you a wish. And, you know, there are people who will go to those extremes to find something that works or what they perceive to work. And, you know, it's a big business. Like people
Mm.
make a lot of money off of it. So, I think the theory behind this movie was interesting and, you know, plausible because you know what, Bruce? Maybe some of those things work, maybe they don't. But I thought it was a really interesting story. And it just kind of shows you just how bananas people can go.
Yeah. Now, this One Wish Willow, the way it was presented in the film, I thought this actually might be a real product. But then I looked it up on the internet. It is fictional. There's really nothing. Well, there might be something close to it, but there's nothing in real life that is like a stick, a piece of willow that you break in half, and you're supposed to make an immediate wish. So that was something that the filmmakers obviously they created on their own,
Hmm.
and it's an interesting product. But yeah, I could definitely see something like this being a good seller. I
Oh,
think
yeah.
there could actually be a market for something like this. People would believe something like this works, and obviously, in the film, it does. Now, as I was mentioning earlier, there's a scene later in the film where Bear's getting desperate. He's got to get out of this situation. He doesn't want to kill himself. He certainly doesn't want to kill Nikki. So he asks Nikki, or rather, he asks his good friend Ian, whom I didn't like very much, to be honest. Of the
No, me
four
neither.
friends, he was the least likable. But he asked Ian to sort of do a replacement wish. And he's hoping that will sort of negate his initial wish, which he really kind of made without thinking it through.
Mhm.
And he kind of did out of anger and not because he really felt it was going to happen. And instead of Ian doing what he was told and making a wish that would sort of negate Nikki's obsession, he wishes for $1 billion. And so literally money starts falling out of the roof of his apartment
That's
and falling to the ground. And that was a weird scene. That was almost comical in
Mhm.
nature, but it certainly proved that the One Wish Willow worked. I mean, we know the first wish it really did a number on Nikki.
Yes.
And then Ian, with his wish, he asked for a million. Was it $1 million or $1 billion? Some ridiculous amount.
Yep,
and that
billion
amount of money
dollars.
ends up falling into his hands. So uh, that scene didn't quite work with me. What'd you think of it?
I thought it was so out of place, and I was like, "Well,
Yeah,
yeah, of course," because, like, I didn't really care much for the Ian character anyway,
yeah,
and for him to just like, "Well, I'm just gonna wish for $1 billion," and then it just, like, starts falling from the sky. I was like, "Yeah," but, he didn't really get to enjoy it, so it's all good.
yeah. Let's talk a little bit about the lead actors, Tracy. So the two leads are Michael Johnston, who plays Bear, and Indy Navarrete, as I found out her name is pronounced. I had a devil of a time trying to find out her pronunciation. I was
Mhm.
looking at all these videos on YouTube, these interviews with her, and almost never do the hosts say her name. They don't
Oh,
introduce her by name. They edit it out, I guess. But I did find a couple where she's referred to as Navarrete,
mhm.
and that was also the Wikipedia pronunciation. So I'm going to go with that. I thought they were both outstanding. Now she's really getting most of the attention. Indy Navarrete as Nikki. She's very attractive. She's a kind character. Early in the movie, there's a homeless guy, I think, outside the theater. She
Mhm.
gives him some money, takes a few moments to talk to him. And then, of course, she does these incredible turns of face where one moment she's rational and sweet, and the next moment she's going into a rage, and then she flips back to normal again. And she did it in a very believable way over and over again. And that scene with the no, no, no. I thought we were having a nice day. I mean, she handles that beautifully. She kind of overshadows Michael Johnston, but I thought he was really good as Bear. He's a likable guy. He didn't want to take advantage of Nikki early on in the movie. He's nervous. He's not sure what to say. I think a lot of guys his age, and I'm guessing he's in his 20s in
Mhm.
this film. A lot of guys were in that situation where, there's somebody they really like and they don't know how to come out and say it. Should they be honest? Should they hold back? I could really sympathize with him. And I thought he was excellent
Mhm.
too. So both were likable and sympathetic, at least until Nikki started acting like a lunatic due to the effects of the One Wish Willow. So I'm curious, Tracy, what did you think of Michael Johnston as Bear and Indy Navarrete as Nikki?
Oh, I love them both. I thought they did really, really well in this movie. I mean, I don't know if they're new to kind of like the acting business, but I've never seen them in anything before. But I agree. They were both very, very likable. But, things did change as that story progressed. And, just kind of the weirder the story got. I kind of lost sympathy for Bear kind of like midway through the movie. He knew what he did was wrong, and, there was a scene early on where it was it showed him that Nikki was kind of suffering, but he continued on without looking for much of a cure, I guess, to this issue, and, I felt bad for Nikki just being put into that situation, but, man, when she kind of, like, did those turns, like, she was, like, scary, like, really, like, her
Yeah,
ups and her downs, like, the way that she did it so perfectly, it was kinda chilling, it was kind of frightening to watch somebody go from one extreme to the other, like, so quickly.
yeah,
I think she did really, really good, and, like, her facial expressions and the makeup that they used on her during, like, some of those transitions, I guess, it was really good, and I think both of these individuals, I think they have a really strong career ahead of them. If I mean, even if they choose to stay in horror, if they do other things, I really think that they did so well here that they've got a good future in front of them.
yeah. She's only 25. She has only
Oh,
8 film or TV credits. That's it.
mhm. Oh,
So
wow.
very young, but her acting performance was like someone far more experienced. So
Mhm.
yeah, I think the potential of both of them is really good, especially with young Indy. She did a great job
Yeah.
here. I thought this film it could have turned out badly if they made Nikki irrational too quickly or all at once. Instead, though, we did get this kind of a gradual degradation of her behavior. It starts with the scene at the restaurant, but then it picks up intensity with the sandwich made of Sandy the cat, and some of her other behaviors, staring at him at night, losing her temper, her just sudden changes in
Mhm.
emotion. Um, those are sudden, but the overall degrading of her character is kind of a gradual thing. I mean, she doesn't go completely lunatic and stay that way. She sort of goes up and down,
Mhm.
and each episode becomes, though, increasingly intense
Yes.
and more violent as well, as we see toward the end of the film. And I thought that part of it was really good. So I want to give you my final thoughts on the movie. So I thought it was very well acted. The scene in this film surprised you, made you jump. And I don't usually jump that much when I'm watching a film, but there were a couple of times where I visibly started twitching in the theater watching this. But the thing I did not like was the ending. I felt this ending was too dark and too dreary, and they didn't really give poor Bear enough of an opportunity to explore a reasonable solution. I would have liked to have seen him have another chance to come up with something to counteract this obsession on the part of Nikki. I like, as you know, horror films that give you some reason for optimism, just even a glimmer of hope. And for me, the last 15 minutes or so didn't give you any of that. I mean, it basically turned out as badly as it could without getting specific.
Yeah.
And that really takes down my score for this film. Now, I know it's a movie, it's received a lot of hype, and people are raving about it. They're talking about it as the best horror movie of 2026. I I'd say it's one of the better ones I've seen this year, but I don't think it's as good as Hokum, which we've talked about in a previous
Mhm.
episode. And it's certainly not at the level of films that we saw in 2025, like Sinners and Weapons, or even Nosferatu in 2024. So I thought it was a very good movie. I thought with a better ending, a little more optimism at the end, just a sliver. I'm not asking for much. I would have gone much higher. So I'll go 3 stars for Obsession. How about you, Tracy? Let's get your final rating for this film.
Yeah, I mean, I thought it was a really good story, Bruce. I mean, it shows people, when they're desperate for something, they'll do just about anything to get whatever they want given the opportunity. But, some things you just don't mess with. And, whether you believe it or not, there are just some things you just don't mess with.
Yeah.
And honestly, the story, like this story here, is not really one that you see every day, at least not in the horror genre. I mean, maybe in I don't know, the romance field, maybe there's a lot of movies like with this subject. But quite honestly, it's not something you see every day in horror. The one thing I did not like, I really the whole bit about the cat, like that was
Hmm. Yeah.
that that really did it for me. That was just kind of like, "Oh, I didn't like that," especially where she made a, um, sandy sandwich. I just
Yeah.
no. No, 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 no.
Yeah.
But, overall, I did give this one 3 stars.
Okay.
I liked what they did with the storyline. I like the actors. They did a great job. But I'll be, 100% honest. If we were not doing this movie to talk about it for the podcast, this is not something I would go out and see. I didn't really know a lot about it, but what I did know, it wasn't really something that struck a chord with me. But,
Yeah.
I'm glad I saw it. It was good. It was a good story. Like you mentioned, there were a couple of jump scares, which I really wasn't expecting because 'cause I'm not like a jump scare person. But,
Yeah.
it was there and it was good storytelling. Um, But yeah, at the end, it was a 3. The ending was, again, without spoiling it, it was,
Bleak.
not yeah, it was yeah, not really what I expected. I think I was expecting something a little not cheerier, but a little bit more light.
Yeah.
But yeah, and it kinda made me think too, like, I absolutely get where the writers were going with this story and all that, but I kinda was thinking, like, if the writers would've kinda did a role reversal on this and, Bear was more like Nikki and Nikki was more like Bear, like, how would that story have been perceived? Like, I don't know. Just it was different. It was a unique storyline, I think, and, you know, lots to think about. Don't mess with One Wish Willow.
Yeah. For me, there's just not enough depth here. With
Yeah.
Sinners, it's a vampire film, but there's also American history. There's racism in America and the Deep South.
Mhm.
Weapons had a lot of things going on with it. So did Nosferatu. They're more complex, deeper films. I mean, Obsession does make you think about people who do become obsessed
Mhm.
with, someone that they've fallen in love with. And I guess maybe one of the themes here is you can't force somebody to love you. And if
Yeah.
you do through supernatural means, it's not going to work. Maybe that's the one thing you can take that has a deeper meaning, but that's about it. It's a simple story. And to be a really great horror film, I guess it just needs a little more complexity, a
Mhm.
little bit more layering. It lacked it for me.
Yeah, and one thing too that I noticed, like, the characters were older, like, they were not high school students. They were, like, you know, in their, like, early to mid-20s, just
Yeah.
given the fact that that's kind of how I perceived it, but it kinda made me feel like it was more of a teenager, high school type movie, if you know what I mean. Um, just I think that, like, of course, these actors did really great in the role, but I feel like the story was meant for, like, younger characters, if that makes sense. Just it was just kind of, like, weird like that for me,
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah. I see your point there. I like 3 out of the 4 characters. To me, Ian was kind of a shallow, crude guy. I didn't
Yeah.
really care for him, um, even though he doesn't come out very well at the end. Not much to say about that. So we both think it's
Yeah.
good, but not great. Doesn't really live up to the hype. People may be disappointed about that, but we have to be honest. So Tracy
Yeah.
goes 3 stars, and I go 3 stars. All right, so that is the first half of our show. We'll take a short break. When we come back, we will take you back 40 years to 1986 and a movie called Maximum Overdrive. Tracy will have a recap. We'll both offer our thoughts on it. Stay with us on the Ghostly Gallery. Welcome back to the Ghostly Gallery podcast. Bruce Markison and Tracy Asteria with you. I'm in the very humid studios of Cooperstown, New York. Tracy is presumably in cooler Canadian studios. Tracy, tell us about the next film on the docket, a film that came out some 40 years ago.
So we're gonna talk about Maximum Overdrive, and it was released on July the 25th, 1986, and it's based on Stephen King's short story Trucks, and it's the only feature film Stephen King ever directed. So this one actually goes way back for me. I still remember my parents, they rented it on VHS, and that was not long after it came out. We had one of those VHS machines, with the big colored buttons on the front. That's what we used. So we watched it at home, and I remember thinking that that was a crazy story when I was a kid. Like, I think I was like 13 years old. And even now, like when someone mentions like Maximum Overdrive, the first thing that comes to mind is like the giant Green Goblin face on that truck. So that is my instant memory. Now, the movie, it gets right into the action. It opens up with Earth passing through like this tail of a mysterious comet. And at first, nobody realizes that something has changed. But it doesn't take long before, the machines start acting differently. And one of the very first people we actually see is Stephen King in a very quick cameo. He walks up to this ATM to try to get cash out of his machine. And instead of giving him money, the machine just keeps insulting him word after word after word. And it's a really fun way to kind of kick things off because you're like, oh, this is going to be a fun movie. And from there, things just keep getting crazier and crazier. The drawbridge opens up while the cars are crossing it. People are falling off. A vending machine starts firing pop cans out at people and smashing them into their bodies at a ball field. An electric carving knife suddenly has a mind of its own, slicing into the body of, this waitress. And before long, anything that has a motor or electricity running through it is going to turn against you. And that's kind of like the premise of this film. So I'm curious, when did you see this at the theater, Bruce? Or did you see this on home video?
I did not see this in the theater. I saw it must have been early 1990s. It was on cable television.
Oh.
And to be honest, Tracy, when I first saw it, it didn't really register with me. I didn't necessarily think it was bad. I didn't really think it was
Hmm.
great. Maybe I wasn't paying attention. For whatever reason, it just didn't hit me. Then I rewatched it a couple of years ago because I remember I've seen all these online reviews of it, and a lot of people
Hmm.
have trashed this movie, and they said this is one of the worst Stephen King adaptations. Of course, it was directed by Stephen King. We'll talk more about that later. But I watched it a couple years back, and I thought, you know what? I missed something the first time around. This is pretty darn good. This was entertaining. Stephen King has trashed himself for doing a bad job, but I don't think he was as bad on this movie in leading it as he's made it out to be. I know he was heavily addicted to cocaine.
Mm.
He doesn't remember a lot from making the movie, which that's never a good sign. But I thought this was pretty darn good, really. Better than what a lot of the critics have said.
Hmm.
That opening scene with a drawbridge really grabs your attention. The drawbridge starts to open on its own. There's two guys. I think they're playing cards in
Yes.
the control booth, and they at first are not noticing that the bridge is opening up, and there's all sorts of cars on either side of the bridge, and this leads to cars sliding back on either side, crashing into each other. One person falls into the water. In a way, though, the way it was done, it was more comedic than horrific,
Hmm.
but it was filmed well. There was a mix of regular speed and then some slow motion put in. I thought it was pretty well done. And then, of course, and you're going to talk more about this as we proceed, that AC/DC music right from the start that grabs you in the opening and does not let go of you. So the opening got me going right away. Wonderful music, interesting scene. Again, looked a little more comic than horrific,
Hmm.
and it certainly had elements of both as we proceed with the movie.
Yep, definitely agree, definitely agree. I think it's, I I I just watched this again just the other night just to refresh my mind because I'll be honest, like, I did see it as a kid on VHS when it was released, and I honestly don't think I have seen it since until just the other evening. So that's been a long time, like, this has
Yeah.
been 40 years. Long time, but, it was kind of humorous at the very beginning,
And it
but
more than held up for you, right?
oh, absolutely, like,
Yeah.
I mean, it's been a long time, but I feel the exact same way watching it today as I did way back then, so that's a good sign.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
But, most of this movie, it actually takes place in just one location. It's the Dixie Boy truck stop. And there's a handful of people from different walks of lives. They're kind of like all stranded there together. You've got the workers, you have the mechanics, you have like the waitress staff and, some families. And they find themselves relying on each other to kind of like stick together because you have to act as one to survive what is happening. The truck stop, it becomes both their shelter and their prison at the same time. And every time someone tries to leave, the machines remind them who's really in control here.
Mm.
And the real star, obviously, is that truck, the Green Goblin face. Like, that's the star of the show.
Hmm.
And And I just found this out because I didn't realize this, but it's pretty cool that the Green Goblin, it wasn't really a part of Stephen King's original short story. It was created only for this movie. And I can't imagine what the story would be like without the giant green face. And
Yeah.
it's one of the most recognizable vehicles in horror. Fans have built replicas of this green face. There's model kits, collectibles, and at horror conventions, you're probably going to see all kinds of these green goblins on display. It's a horror icon like, all by itself, like, just this truck. So, Bruce, when someone mentions Maximum Overdrive, is that what you first think about? Is the giant green goblin?
Yeah, I think visually
Yeah.
that comes to mind. I don't know if there's any one scene that really
Mhm.
dominates my memory, although certainly whenever that Green Goblin is on screen, that does captivate you.
Yeah.
I think one scene that really does jump out for me is when the character Bubba, played by great character actor Pat Hingle,
Mm.
when he comes out of the diner and he starts shooting, you think he's shooting at a group of people in the middle of the parking lot, but he's actually shooting at, I want to say, a driverless truck behind him. For
Mhm.
some reason, that scene sticks with me, and pretty much any scene with Pat Hingle, because he is loud and obnoxious and
Mhm.
overbearing, and you'll love every minute of it when he's on screen.
Yes. Oh, I totally agree. That guy, he was a riot, especially when he got out his little grenade launcher or rocket launcher or whatever it
Yeah,
was. That was priceless.
yeah.
But I mean, like, all of the characters, like, they were all so good in this movie. Um, Definitely different. Like, they were all quite different. Emilio Estevez plays the guy named Bill. He was the cook at the truck stop, and he steps up as the group's leader. He's just like your average Joe. He's not, like a superhero or an action character. He's just an ordinary guy trying to keep everybody together, but he just kinda takes command and, he does a great job. And like you mentioned, Pat Hingle, Bubba Hendershot, the owner of the truck stop,
Mhm.
just
Great name.
opinionated. I know, right? Like, you can't get any better than that. And he's just, he brings a lot of personality and does have a lot of those memorable moments. Like, when you watch this movie, you automatically think of him too. And Laura Harrington, who plays the girl Brett, who comes into this picture, um, she's quite a strong voice in the group. She comes in as kind of like a hitchhiker, I guess. She drives in with, I believe he is a Bible salesman. I think that's what he was,
Mhm.
who was also another larger than life character. And I don't recall his name, but he was quite comical as well. And then Yardley Smith, and I totally forgot she was in this movie. This is one of her very, very early roles before she became the voice of Lisa Simpson. So
Mm.
for me, being a huge fan of The Simpsons and going back to watch this movie, it was super hard for me to take her seriously because all I could see was Lisa Simpson. Like, that's
Yeah.
all I could see, right? So, it was just really weird, and to kinda, like, know that it was before The Simpsons kinda, like, were a big deal, I thought that was really kind of unique. But, a very fun group of characters. Everyone handles it differently. Um, it was really entertaining. So I'm kinda curious too, like, did you besides Baba, was there another character that you liked, or were they all pretty much similar to you for you?
I have to go with the lead. I really like
Mhm.
Emilio Estevez.
Mm.
His character, by the way, is named Bill Robinson. So, as you know, I'm a baseball fan, right? And I hear the name Bill Robinson. Bill Robinson was a very good outfielder, third baseman in the 1960s and 70s. He played on the world champion Pirates in 1979, later became a very respected hitting coach with the Mets. A lot of people thought he was going to become a manager, and then he died while I believe he was a coach in the Dodgers system, but he was a very good career baseball man. And I just wonder if Stephen King picked that name for a reason. Stephen King is a baseball fan. He's a huge Red Sox fan.
Oh,
He knows
really?
baseball. I wonder if he picked the name Bill Robinson because of the baseball player or if that's just coincidental. But as a baseball fan, I hear a character name that's the name of a significant major leaguer. That's the first thing I think of.
Mhm.
In this movie, Estevez's character of Robinson, he is an everyman. He is a guy that we would like to be like. We hope that we could step up and take on the role of hero if we were ever called to do it. He's a short order cook living kind of an unglamorous life at this remote truck stop out in the middle of nowhere. And he's a guy that really steps up. And I think every guy wants to be like that. And I thought Estevez played the role very nicely. I
Mm.
think I've talked about this on past shows. I don't think he gets credit for being a good actor, as good an actor as he's been. He's always been overshadowed by his brother, Charlie Sheen.
Mhm.
But I look at Charlie Sheen. Charlie Sheen probably has more talent and at his peak was a bigger star. I think he threw away a lot of that talent. Emilio Estevez has delivered a more consistent, solid career. Maybe he's never peaked the way Charlie has, but he's a reliable actor. And I think he's done very quietly a good job.
Mm.
And I think he does a fine job here. He got razzed for this movie. Uh, he got a golden raspberry. People said his performance was awful. I don't see it at all. I thought he was excellent in this role. I really liked him. And that's what you want the protagonist to be, is a likable person that you can empathize with and you want to be like that person. To me, that's a success.
No, I agree, and I really like him anyway as an actor, like, anything that he's ever been in, I've loved it. I mean, he's been in films with Kiefer Sutherland, and he's been just I really like him. Um, I also like his father, Martin Sheen, I think he's a good
Mhm.
actor as well. And I think Emilio has I I am sure that he's taken a step behind the camera. I think he's into directing these days, I think.
Yeah.
But,
Yep.
when like, to me, he is, like, 80s idealistic. Like,
Mhm.
when you say the 80s, he is who I think about. Kiefer Sutherland, Kevin Bacon, like, all of those guys, right? Um those are the guys that you think about. And I really do like him just like as an actor and he was great in this movie too. So yeah.
Yeah. I agree.
And like you mentioned this music, the AC/DC soundtrack, great fit for this movie.
Mhm.
And it's actually one of Stephen King's favorite bands. So when you say Bill Robinson, that chances are he did name that character based on the baseball guy. I would say because he's known to put his little touches on his movies. So AC/DC being one of his favorite bands and the songs like Who Made Who, Hell's Bells, and Shake Your Foundations. Like this was a highly charged movie. Like it was just action, action, action. And then the practical effects, right? This movie was made way before CGI. So everything that you see is is real, like practical effects. The explosions, the destruction, like it was all like real. There was nothing auto generated. There's nothing AI about it. There's nothing CGI. It was practical effects. And it's a great 80s movie, like action, action, action. And when it was released in '86, like you mentioned, it was mixed reviews, not a huge hit with critics, but as time goes on, it's found its loyal audience. It's like another cult classic. And it made 7.4 million at the box office when it was released. But the budget was 10 million, so it was a loss. But, I'm pretty sure it's more than made up for that over the years. I
Yeah.
think it's kind of made its money back, but, it's turned into a cult classic. I think a lot of Stephen King movies are classics, quite frankly. His stories are amazing for the most part, and if it's taken correctly, like, his movies are also really good. So I do like this one, and they still talk about it today. So
Yeah.
do you think that it still lives up to its hype today? Like, is it a cult classic in your opinion?
Yeah, I think it absolutely fits that definition. It lost 3 million, which for some of these studios is a drop in the bucket.
Mm,
But the reviews were not good, and now people do look back on it a lot more fondly. Why? Well, first of all, the premise I think is really good. You've got
mhm,
machines, including huge trucks and bulldozers and drawbridges, suddenly taking on minds of their own. They start attacking people for seemingly no good reason,
mm,
putting people in dangerous situations. There's really no explanation, at least not until the end of the film. There are some really effective scenes, effective buildup of tension throughout. And that's mixed in with some of the campiness that you get from the 1980s. And as you've talked about, who doesn't get a kick out of seeing the truck with a large green goblin on it? I'll tell you, Tracy, there's something about 1980s horror movies that take place out on the highway, out on the open
mhm.
road, remote places. The Hitcher is another one of these movies that
Yes.
does it for me. And there's even a movie from the '90s. It's the movie with Kurt Russell. I think it's called Breakdown. That, for the
Oh,
most part, takes
yeah.
place out on highways.
Mhm,
They're out in the daytime. You can see everything clearly. Sometimes when films are done at night, it's hard to see what's going on,
mhm.
especially if the lighting is not proper. But with these daytime films out in the open country, there's just something about it that does it for me. It to me, it screams 1980s and even 1990s. And also, as you said, the special effects, the practical effects are absolutely top notch here. They must have spent
Mhm.
quite a bit of money wrecking these trucks and these other, various machines. It was all done right out there. This is not
Mhm.
trickery. This is not computer generated. This was stuff that they actually did, and that's always the best for special effects. So,
Yeah.
yeah, those are all good qualities, and I think they all play a factor in making this a cult favorite.
Mhm. No, absolutely agree. And another movie that every time I think about Maximum Overdrive, I also think about the movie Duel. I can't remember if that's like a
Yeah,
'70s. Is it a '70s movie or
early
early
'70s.
80s?
Yeah,
Early '70s. I
yeah,
remember that movie too because I remember my dad rented it and we watched it, and I thought that was, like, one of the scariest movies that I had saw too way back.
yeah,
Just it was just, like, it was so unreal, and of course, for years, I was, like, always looking behind me as my dad was driving his car.
yeah. You can put
"What's
all those
behind me?"
movies in this category: Duel, The Hitcher, Breakdown, and
Mhm,
this one, Maximum Overdrive. They all take advantage of the natural outdoor country landscape, and it
mhm.
works in each one.
No, absolutely. And you know what? This movie, Maximum Overdrive, it always brings back good memories. I think about when we rented it on VHS and, like I didn't find it like super scary by any means. It's sheer adrenaline, it's just sheer fun, and it's just a great movie. The Goblin truck, the AC/DC soundtrack, the effects, it's all entertaining, and I love it, and for anybody that hasn't seen it, definitely see it, like, don't listen to critics or anything, like, it's a good watch. I thought I did give it 3.5 stars, but I do really like it, and that's my take on it. How about you, Bruce?
Yeah. It's also a film that's available for free on streaming
Yeah?
outlets, so it's out there, it's not hidden. A
Mm,
couple of things I wanted to, say about the movie before I give my final review. We mentioned earlier that Stephen King did direct the film. He didn't remember a lot of that time because of his cocaine problems. He thought he did a poor job. I think he's a little bit hard on himself. Also interesting, Tracy, rumors have swirled for a long time that a more accomplished director, George Romero, actually directed part of the film.
wow.
And they've said that because King was having such trouble with cocaine that maybe he wasn't available for some of the shoot. King has denied this. He said that Romero was definitely on set. They're friends. They were friends back
Mm,
then. Of course, Romero has since passed away, but they were friends. Romero was there and I guess gave him some advice. But according to King, Romero did not direct any scenes, at least not that he can remember. So that's an
wow.
interesting part. Also, if you look at Emilio Estevez in his career, I was only able to find two horror films that he ever did. This one, and the other is a relatively obscure 1983 anthology film called Nightmares. It's one I have not seen, but it stars Christina Rains. She was one of the stars of 1977's The Sentinel, and also
Okay.
Anthony James, who played the driver in Burnt Offerings, that creepy driver. He's also in that film. I'd like to see that. So just two
Mm,
horror films for Emilio Estevez. You look at it, Maximum Overdrive, it has been an overly criticized movie. It's generally called one of the poorer of the King adaptations. I think that's an exaggeration. I talked about Emilio Estevez getting the golden raspberry. I just don't understand that at all. I think he's more than competent. He's very good, in fact, in the lead role. Of course, Pat Hingle contributes a lot as the very erratic and emotional person working at the diner. Now, when you look at this in the context of all the Stephen King movies, Maximum Overdrive for me is not at the level of a Carrie or
mm,
Salem's Lot or The Shining, but it's way better than some other King films like Cell or The Dark Tower.
yeah.
I would put it probably somewhere in the middle, maybe upper middle of all the
Mhm.
Stephen King adaptations. I wouldn't consider it an all time classic, but if you enjoy campy horror with moments of comedy, which I do, I think it's a film people will enjoy. So I think it's
Mhm.
very good. I give it 3 stars.
Nice, nice. It's definitely one of those films, I will tell you. And just like on an interesting personal note, Bruce, um, something that I recently learned about this new house that I've bought and moved into, the former owner was a huge Stephen King fan.
Really?
He was a huge Stephen King fan, and a neighbor told me that there is, like, a fireplace mantle here in this house, and it contains, like, an electric fireplace now, but, he had Stephen King books and memorabilia everywhere in this house, which I find fascinating because I had mentioned to her that we do this horror podcast and
Mm.
tried to and told her a little bit about it, and she proceeded to tell me all about the former owner here and just being such a Stephen King fan that he actually named his son after the little boy in Pet Cemetery.
Really?
Yes. Yeah. So
Wow.
an interesting kind of note.
Yeah. Any of that Stephen King memorabilia left behind for you?
Not a thing. No,
No.
nothing.
Well, maybe it's buried behind a wall.
Oh my goodness, you just never
Yeah.
know.
Yeah. Boy, that's the last thing you want to do in a new house you've just purchased is start putting holes in the walls to see what's behind them.
Yes, considering there is interesting enough, it's a back split house. So in the front part, there's actually like a small crawl space under the front part of the house because
Yeah.
it's a back split. And I am too afraid to go under there and have a peek to see what's under there. You just never
Well,
know.
that's something the rest of your family can do on their own, right?
Yes, that's right. Send
Yeah.
in a little robotic camera or something.
All right. Well, way to bring the Stephen King connection around to your house. That'll do it for Maximum Overdrive. Tracy and I both like this one. Tracy gives it 3.5. I give it 3 out of 5 stars. Those are both good reviews. And then earlier in the show, we talked about the new hit film for 2026,
Mhm.
Obsession. We both thought it's good, 3 stars, but maybe not living up to the hype that's everywhere on the internet and in theaters. Good film, but not great, at least not in our opinion. Well, Tracy, that'll do it for this week's show. Good stuff. Thanks as always.
Oh, awesome. Thank you, Bruce. This has been fun.
It's always fun for us. Hopefully, fun for the listeners as well. And we do hope that all of the listeners and our viewers, we hope that they have enjoyed joining us in this Museum of the Macabre. And we do hope that all of you will join us the next time right here in the Ghostly Gallery.